Cradle, Dogs of Fount, Chapter 36, Part 3. As Nate approached, he tried to see if Lou and the guys were there, and they weren't. And he also barely recognized any of the faces in any of the clusters of groups. However, he knew that would change if there was any mess on the ground in China, they'd make friends and trust each other with every bullet spit at them. Nate and Heather let their packs off gently at their feet at the edge of the group. They nodded at those nearby and gave a smile or two. "Anyone need a square? I got plenty for the trip," Nate said, offering his cigarettes. "There's one good thing about being a warrior. You never need for a square," a handsome warrior with a salesman's smile answered. "Yeah, I could use one, my friend." Nate gave him one of his reds and shook the warrior's hand. "Nate Lint. Chris Ruiz." Nate lit up and took a good hit. "Seen any action yet?" Nate asked. "Definitely. Been a warrior for 5 years." Chris flicked some ash. "You're from the famous Fount squad, right?" "That's us. The rest ain't here yet," Nate answered. "How'd you get the chiefs to trust you?" "You don't trust us?" Nate asked pointedly. There was an awkward moment. "Nah, just screwing with you, man. When members of your squad die for Philly, you get the chief's trust somehow." More warriors were walking toward the craft, making plenty of noise. "Ain't that right?" Chris answered. "Look, Nate, you need anything, you come to me or my squad. We're Squad Uptown, the last survivors of that unit." They shook hands again and nodded, and Nate went back to Heather. She gave Nate an assessing look. "He's cool, I guess," Nate answered. It was another 30 minutes before Lou and the rest of the Fountain squad showed up on the runway. Everyone greeted and joked around, trying to settle each other's nerves with so much being uncertain. Gary kept asking why there were those janky-looking patches on the plane, and the rest of them joked about how defunct the plane was once it was brought out in the open. To no one's surprise, Chief Nolan arrived with his pack, and a few people even cheered. Nate guessed because the man inspires confidence. Inside the transport quarters of the UT, there were seats lined on the inner hall with blue padded cushions that gave some reliable source of comfort. There were literally around 100 warriors going on this mission, and they all fit easily in the hold with seats to spare. Nolan advised those who were scared to insert the compiece in their ear for live or real-time updates on the flight. The UT-700 would be flying pretty fast, but even so, it was going to take around 8 hours to reach New Hong Kong. Looking at Heather, Nate could sense no anxiety, but he still wondered what was going on in her guarded head. He was confident that if he could key in on her problem, he'd be able to fix it for her, probably without her realizing what he was doing. The rear hatch lifted smoothly all the way up and clanked and caught, securely held in place. Then, not too long after, the jet engines roared to life, and it got really tense and silent inside the personnel quarters. Then, with an initial jerk, the craft started to roll and gain speed, leading to the takeoff. The troops were jerked sideways in their seats as the craft took off into the skies, and it reached altitude in a few minutes and then smoothed out. They were over the Atlantic in minutes, but no one could see for being faced away from the windows. It wasn't like a normal civilian craft with windows at every row. There was one oval window in the hull every 10 meters, Nate guessed. Still, no one was talking. As they cruised in the sky for a third hour of the flight, the warriors started to loosen up, and even some of them chatted despite the loud engines. Heather had nodded off, and Nate was looking at his screen, still trying to get what was going on in Fount. He knew that because of Hawkbird's last mission, there was this mission in turn, but the higher-ups doled out the least intel they could manage, even to the senior warriors like Ramsey. Ramsey wasn't joining them on this flight, but he said there was a highly probable chance he'd be on any of the following transports, and Nate dearly hoped he did. Ramsey was the most reliable person in this half of Nate's life. Nate had no idea where they were in terms of Cradle. He thought he heard someone say they were over the Middle East, but he wasn't sure. He was beginning to get extremely bored, so he allowed himself to take a nap. To Nate, it couldn't have been more than 10 minutes when the plane dipped violently. Heather was jolted awake too, and he made sure to squeeze her thigh for her emotional support, but she looked okay. The craft finally leveled off, putting Nate's stomach back where it was supposed to be, and he fished out the comm piece just like dozens of other warriors to hear what the pilot was saying. "I repeat, everything is okay, warriors. This is a 4-engine craft, and we have 3 completely operational right now. We've transferred power, thrust, lift evenly between all of them, and we will touch down in New Hong Kong in 4.5 hours. Sit back and stay strapped in just as a precaution," the pilot explained. Just after he made his speech, the plane dipped quickly but leveled off confidently right after. The warriors were all focusing the best they could on how the ride felt. No one was talking. Nate looked over to Heather and she winked at him and he smirked. He kept his hand on her thigh and tried to take another nap.